Thank you for tuning in to the You Own the Experience podcast. In this week's episode, we sit down with Priscilla Torres, HR executive in South Florida, as well as a fellow podcast host at the Ivy Podcast. The conversation today revolves around human resources and the relationship with staffing and recruiting firms, and how an organization would benefit greatly from really getting to know themselves before they do invest and find a recruiting and staffing partner. This week's episode is brought to you by our friends over at CrimCheck. And as always, don't forget to check out the Ask Lauren segment at the end of the episode, where we sit down with Mrs. Lauren Jones to talk all things HR and staffing tech. And in this week's segment, we talk about how you know you're going to get an ROI from your tech spend. Please remember to rate, review, and share the episode if you enjoy it. And I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks. All right, guys. Thank you, Priscilla, so much for jumping on. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. How are you?
I cannot complain. It is the 7th of October when we're recording this, and we're actually going to do a cross episode. So the Ivy Podcast and the You Own the Experience podcast are teaming up. So I normally don't introduce myself, but I will do that. But I will let you do the honors and give your 2-minute elevator pitch about yourself and your background and the Ivy Podcast, if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me today. So my name is Priscilla Torres, and I serve as an HR executive for Health Choice Network. And I've been with the organization for the last 9 years. In addition to my full-time focus on driving outcomes within all HR functions, I am also an adjunct professor, and I've been teaching for a few years. Most recently, I've partnered with Ivy Podcast, and we've been doing wonderful work in the line of interviewing different individuals, different leaders across all sorts of industries on a global aspect, and just bringing knowledge to our audience and being able to hopefully share some best practices. So thank you again for having me.
No, it's awesome. Glad to have a HR person on. Normally we talk to staffing folks. It is good to talk to people on the other side of it, on the customer side. So pretty excited. For my introduction, my name is Rob Mann. I am an enterprise account manager for Able, which is an onboarding automation platform that serves the staffing industry, mostly high volume and healthcare staffing, clinicians, anyone who have credentials. And then I'm also the podcast host for the team. And I was a high school teacher, so I didn't get to get called professor. So I'm a little jealous because Professor Mann has a quite erudite air to it.
It does.
But Professor Torres, thank you for being on and really excited to chat with you. So I think we decided I'll drive the interview because you probably have way more knowledge about HR than I do. And we'll go from there. So Priscilla, one of the things obviously that I'm always super curious about on the podcast is how you drive great outcomes, which is something you mentioned in your intro, right? HR professional for about 10 years. What are some of the things that you do to make sure that those candidates and talent that you place are having that great experience, right? Driving an incredible experience?
So it's a really good question. It all starts off with really understanding what the business outcomes should be. So what are the strategic goals for the organization? What is driving the metrics, or what is driving the organization forward? And really, once you have that information, then it's being able to work backwards and identifying what are those competencies, what are those skills that we need that will not only find good talent, because we want someone that checks off all the boxes and has all the qualifications needed, but really it's who are those that have the will and the drive to just take our organization forward. My stance and the way that I lead my department is that we don't want to recruit for today. We want to be able to recruit talent for the future so that we can sustain staff for 5, 10, 15 years. And at Health Choice now, we've been very successful. We have a very low turnover rate. Our engagement scores are high, and we monitor all of these metrics and we take pride in them. But we also utilize all of these metric items to help us drive not only the outcomes within recruitment and retention, but it's also, taking a continuous pulse of our organizational culture through surveys, public forums, that we can continuously collect data and be able to identify what those trends are and find the year to change and adapt. Obviously, with the pandemic that we recently experienced and are still experiencing, that threw a lot of obstacles our way. And we thrived in those kind of situations because we were very adaptable and we have a very flexible environment. So we were able to quickly address ways that we can do things differently, whether that was looking at additional partnerships or additional relationships that we needed to make to bring in the right talent, leveraging the market and where it was moving at that time. They were being flooded with resumes. well, what processes that we need to put in place to ensure that we were touching all of the candidates, that we were actively keeping a pulse of all the influx of candidates that we were receiving. And then in addition to that is, and what's most important to me as the head of my department, is what kind of experience are we giving our candidates? And by experience, I mean from the initial job posting advertisement that they saw, does that advertisement clearly depict our organizational culture? Does it depict our vision and our mission for the organization? And then walking through all the way until that person's 90th day in that role, we wanted to create an experience that allows them to feel included, that makes them feel a part of the family since we're working all remotely. So there's just an array of different things that we have incorporated into our processes just to be able to foster that experience.
Nice. A lot of really important things there, right? Number one, measuring it, always important for an organization to not only have the North Star, but they're driving towards, but to be able to measure it and know what those metrics are to say that they're getting to that North Star. I love that you made sure that every candidate that applied got a touch point. It's always better to know than not to know, right? Like, hey, we don't think you're a fit, sorry, but apply next time. I'm curious, how many applicants, if you posted a job during kind of quarantine lockdown, how many applicants were you getting versus the average prior to 2020?
So it's a good question. So historically, because we have such a low turnover, very rarely did we have to recruit for positions. So on average, we would maybe have 5 open positions every year. This year certainly gave us an opportunity because given that we are in the nonprofit healthcare space and Health Choice Network serves our community health centers, and they were on the forefront of providing COVID testing and providing care, we certainly had to expand some of our areas and some of our services. So we had to get very creative with the way that we were recruiting for candidates. So on average, utilizing some of the new tools and resources that we started using recently, we were averaging easily 400 applications a week across all of our open positions, which for us was not the norm. We weren't used to having such a large number of applications. So having that said, it was so important for us to just take a step back and really assess the situation, assess how we can best provide that experience. To your point, making sure that we're creating processes where they're receiving touch points, that they're receiving emails, that they have access to us. We had a global phone number that any candidate can contact us or text us if they had any questions. And being accessible at all, kind of hours of the day and being able to get a hold of people, even if it was after hours or on the weekend. We welcomed that type of relationship, and maybe not for long term, but we wanted to ensure that we were just accessible, that we weren't potentially losing any potential candidates. We had to find all these new ways of connecting with everyone.
So you have 400 candidates coming in. That's kind of an insurmountable number to really weed through. How confident were you that you were getting the right talent? Were you using a staffing firm for any of those?
Definitely the partnerships with recruiting agencies was really important. So we partnered with ProSource IT and they were able to assist with some of our roles. It's important that we understand our own limitations. My department at the time was a department of 3. So I had to ensure that we understood our limitations. We oversee all functions of HR. Recruitment is just one small fraction of everything else that we do. So it was important that we were allocating the right resources. We were looking at the appropriate tools to help us with the recruitment processes. More importantly, was partnering with great vendors and great agencies that will essentially be a reflection of us. So we are very selective as to who we partner with, because it's important that they are advocating for Health Choice Network and they understand our culture. They understand what employees would thrive in our environment and what to look for. That certainly helped with filling our positions.
No, that makes sense. And the reason I ask, right, is because you think about having 400 times 5 roles, and that's already an insurmountable number. There's 3 of y'all. Locating talent is not an easy thing to do, right? That's why you partner with the ProSources of the world or the other recruiting firms of the world, because you necessarily have to answer this, but when someone got hired, were they staffing firm presented? They were submitted from the staffing firm more than likely, because that gets to your top of your inbox, right? Not the people who flood necessarily your apply page. Is that fair?
So for us, we have a little bit of a different approach. We want to make sure that we're providing all candidates with an equal opportunity. We make sure that we're exhausting all of our candidates before we're making selections to move through our recruiting process. But of course, one of the main reasons why you want to partner with a recruiting agency is because they've already done the vetting. They're presenting to you their top candidates that they would recommend for that role. So certainly there's always going to be a little bit more attention that will be looked at on those candidates. But for us, before we even decide on whether we want to proceed or not with the interviewing process, we like to look at all the candidates that we receive in that given week, and then we can assess.
Yeah, because in my head, and this is kind of like, obviously I advocate on the side of staffing and recruiting firms because that's who I work with and I serve. You're always trying to figure out like why you should go with a staffing firm. And like, as much as it's nice getting 400, it's a lot of numbers to weed through. Sometimes it's easier just to have someone be like, hey, this person is vetted, da 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 da. I'm glad you guys don't do that and like take the easy way out, which is a great commitment to the experience for your candidates. But you could see where that would be like the more efficient way. But it also is to say, hey, if you are a candidate, there is a benefit to having an agent advocating on your behalf. And so if you're highly talented, there could be a clear path to the decision maker. Think about it like a sales role. If your job is to sell yourself into a role, having an advocate gets you through the gatekeeper, which is the apply button sometimes, right? If there is a firm who's not doing that, would that be fair kind of like in your perspective over 10 years?
100%. And that's key. And that's why it's so important to partner with organizations that don't believe in the transactional relationship of, I just have an open requisition, I'm just going to fill it, and lack to build that relationship with that person. Because in the end of the day, that person may have not been a good fit for us at Health Choice Network, but they will most certainly be an excellent candidate for another position. So it's so important as a recruiting agency that provides these services that they build that relationship with the individuals that they're representing and that they're advocating for, to your point, so that they can essentially continue to possibly work with them and find them work. So I think it's on both ends. It's important from the consumer standpoint and also from the actual candidate that's looking for positions, especially now. There's so many individuals who've been furloughed or have been laid off, and they're just actively trying to build those relationships. I can't even imagine, some of the horror stories or experiences that they've had on lack of responses, on ghosting. That's the new thing. Recruiters are ghosting these candidates and they're just yearning for an opportunity, yearning for a connection. I make sure that even with LinkedIn, if there's anyone that wants to connect with me and ask me a question, I always make time to respond, because you just never know if that question is going to give them their next opportunity or is going to help them in any way possible. And I know not a lot of people are like that, but that's just what I stand by. I just want to help others and impact in any way that I can.
And it's also kind of the teacher in you at this point, right? I did hear the passion in that too. So that was awesome. I can appreciate that. I think I've told you I did my fair of hiring, where if I know someone's looking and I can point them in the right direction, right? And this is just in general for life advice, right? Like, this is a great time to think about how you network and what your network is. Because whether you're using a staffing firm or you just have a great network, right? It's all the same thing. It's someone making a referral into somebody else, like putting their name on the line and bringing you to the front. So definitely need to network and understand how do you build your value. And part of that value is always your network. So complete side advice, but it ties into this conversation. Just for instance, like I know the owner of ProSource. I was working at Bullhorn. I met him at a conference where he was actually attending as a participant, but he also he's on the board of directors of some technology that was exhibiting there as well. And then that was 3 years ago. And then since then, I've worked with him as a vendor for another software and just continue to increase my engagement with Caesar. He's a really incredible CEO and business mind. So it's been cool. But that's the idea of a network, right?
Absolutely.
If you're without a job and you're listening to this and you're not sure what to do, get on LinkedIn and start asking questions. Ask Priscilla and myself questions. Like, I'm happy to always chat too. So I wanted to spend a few minutes there because I think that helps you stand out in this crazy world, man. There's too many people unemployed. There's just too much seeking and not enough answers, I think, or too many questions.
That's a good way of saying it. And anything that we can do to help, even just to offer some advice or point someone in the right direction, that's the smallest thing that we can do during these times to just help one another.
So circling all the way back here, you said you guys use some tools to help with the attraction, I believe you're saying. So what are you guys using? Was it an attraction and engagement tool or?
So that's a good question. So one, we first started off with going back to the basics. So we looked at our internal marketing team and we created different documents or flyers or videos on our beautiful living open office concept that we can't use right now because we're in quarantine. But we have this beautiful facility that, we invested so much money and effort into planning just so that our associates can have a comfortable, flexible work environment. So we wanted to take a step back and see, okay, from a recruiting standpoint, what kind of story is it that we're trying to state? And what type of marketing materials, what type of tools, what type of social media presence do we need to have so that we can properly tell that story to the outside in so we could ultimately attract new candidates. So we really relied on social media and looking at different job boards, connecting, networking. You mentioned it's such a key area, and I can't stress it enough for recruiters or anyone who's in talent acquisition. You need a village. And there is a wealth of networks, of groups, of individuals who have so much advice to offer. And it's not being afraid to know that we don't know everything. And it's asking questions to our colleagues, partnering with different associations, different groups, linking up. There's so many LinkedIn groups that have specified professionals. So if I'm looking for a CFO, let me try to get into these CFO groups and introduce myself and ask for those referrals so it's not so invasive and I'm not targeting you as an individual. Maybe I am targeting you, but I'll start the conversation a little bit more passive and see if they have anyone that they would recommend, would they consider the position. And it's really about just building those relationships. So those are some of the key items that have been very successful for us as we have filled quite a few positions in the last few months.
Makes sense. And I think that's, again, going back to LinkedIn, I always go back to the Steve Jobs video. If you have a question and you want to figure it out, you have to go ask. I don't know if you've ever seen that video. It's pretty cool. He emailed or he sent a letter to IBM when he was a kid and was like, hey, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z. Can you help me? And then they sent him some stuff to help him. I think it was to build a computer, but then he ended up interning there. And then that turned into a career, right? If that's not proof of the pudding, go on YouTube and search Steve Jobs Ask, and you'll see the video of the interview. And he explains what he did. He just reached out. You think it's that hard, but I also have guests who've reached out to people at Southwest Airlines to learn about their culture, and they've been invited on site. So people want to help. And I think, you can hear it in Priscilla's voice. And obviously I am more than willing to help, but we'll stop beating that dead horse. I think maybe it's the important horse to beat at this point with a podcast that's talking about the staffing industry and HR. We're telling you the key to the castle. Go talk to people.
But this is why I love not only, having the opportunity of being here, but also being able to be an advocate for Ivy Podcast and being a host for them has certainly, knowing the impact that we have on our viewers and being that glimpse of hope and having the opportunity to share all these great best practices. The intent is we just want to be able to help others. I think to your point, I think we're great advocates of that. But it's just so important because in a time like this where everything is just uncertain and so many people are just looking for guidance, even if they're stable within their jobs, we've had to change working remotely, the way that we onboard staff, the way that we keep culture alive and make sure that it's not pivoting or changing in a negative direction. There's so much work that needs to be done, and it's a lot of new experiences and new circumstances that we're facing. So being able to have these avenues to learn and maybe apply something that is shared. If that happens to just one person, then you and I did our job. And that's all life's all about.
Yeah. Only have to plant the seed, one little seed, one time, right? Going back, you did mention that you guys adapted pretty quickly. Did you guys have anything in place to help get to all your associates and team members to remote quickly? Like, were you laptop? Were you desktop? Like, what was the infrastructure that allowed for you guys to get remote so quickly? It sounds like you guys adapted rapidly, whereas our team basically had all laptops. We could just leave the office. There was an office in Cleveland, but we all just left. We didn't need to go back again, maybe to pick up a spare monitor, but that's it.
Leading up to pre-COVID, we were in a traditional building with cubicles, desk, and then we transitioned our staff across about a year and a half. It was a year and a half journey where we were preparing our associates to be more flexible and work in different workspaces. because we knew that our new building and our new facility was going to be an open living office concept. So that means that no one would have a designated desk and you would have high booths and lounging areas and private offices, but nothing would be assigned to a person. So we were in an interesting circumstance because about 5% of our associates worked remotely, but the other 95 worked within the office. But because we had an opportunity to move into our new building in August, and we had from August through March to learn how to be flexible, we provided all of our associates with the latest and greatest equipment. So everyone already had the technology and the tools that they needed to be successful in an open living office concept. So the only shift was working from home, which certainly brought other challenges, right? Because for me, I'm a mom of a toddler. So having to balance our work schedules and the demands that we have within our employer, and then now having to manage the house and manage, small children. So we were very mindful of some of these unforeseen circumstances that would impact our associates. So we just found ways to keep everyone engaged. We incorporated new practices where our leaders were required to frequently, conduct huddles and make sure that they're keeping a pulse of their staff so that we continue the culture of our organization, whether we were in person or remotely. And I'll tell you that it was incredibly flawless. There's always areas of opportunities and always things that we can sit here and say we could have done differently. But for the most part, I'm so proud of the work that all of our leadership team did, just adapt quickly. And certainly a shout out to our CIO and all of the technology that we already had invested in and the practices that we had invested in before COVID that allowed us to be able to transition quickly.
It's so interesting because your physical space changing led you to being able to adapt more quickly. I'm assuming other technology companies probably have that kind of open, flexible space, but it just happened to be fortuitous that you guys got to that spot where you need to be ready for it, right? Because if you guys are still in cubicles with desktops, that's a very different acquisition and procurement piece. I was talking to somebody maybe in June, and he said he actually had to run a project to get 1,000 people laptops in the course of 2 weeks. But then not only laptops, it was banking, so they had to get security on those laptops. So they had to go to a hub or hubs to get these things installed. It sounds like a logistical nightmare, and you really need to have the right team in place. But it sounds like you guys had, again, fortuitously done the work to be more flexible in the office, because you had a flexible office, but then it turned into a win when you went home.
Yes, thankfully, we were pretty set.
I like it. Maybe the last two kind of big topics, we've kind of hit this already, but any other advice you would give with working with a staffing and recruiting firm, or if you were to say, hey, I've seen these things work with staffing firms and I've seen these things not work in your experience in your 10 years, anything that would come to mind?
So first and foremost it is imperative for the HR professional or the talent acquisition leader to take the time and invest in building that relationship, not being afraid to vet through different organizations, being able to ensure that they are going to execute what your expectations are, and setting that groundwork from the very beginning is important. Fostering those relationships is important too, and sharing as much information as you can so that they understand and they can properly represent your company. So for us, we're in an open living office concept. How can an agency represent Health Choice Network and be able to advocate for Health Choice Network without visiting our headquarters and being able to see it for yourself, the bright colors, how comfortable and warm it feels in every area of the building. Our gym, we have a state-of-the-art gym, beautiful lactation and wellness rooms that promote downtime. And so all these different components that I get excited about because I was a part of that process, but finding an organization that can help drive that same excitement, which we've been able to find, gratefully through ProSource and through our relationship with them. Those are the type of relationships that you want to continue to foster and build on and keep that level of engagement, because they will ultimately be a representation of you and your team and your organization. I think that would be the most important, and people finding recruiting agencies that care for the candidate. There's been times in the past where I have stopped working with different organizations because the people that they were bringing, to recommend to us, they were just a number. For me, you have to keep this process humane. And I want to be able to see that they're invested and they're representing that person. And if I did not see that in the past, then that was something that would help us kind of drive it in a different direction.
I think that's pretty interesting. So you've had that experience where the transactional firm is just not going to fly. And you could tell that from that conversation with the candidate when they came in. You're just like, how do you know your recruiter? Da, 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 da. Okay, it's interesting. It's good to hear too. Just to be fully transparent, like every staffing firm says the relationships that they build are a differentiator. But if everyone's saying it, is it really a differentiator at that point? And it's a valid question. But if you actually live it, like if we go to a customer and they say, hey, like, have these guys been delivering consistently? How long they've been delivering? I think that's more valid. But one of the things that I am, as someone who provides technology, right, in the digital transformation age and becoming flexible, what happens if your staffing firm wasn't flexible and they couldn't go to work remotely too easily, or everything was on-prem and they need people to come in to actually function, right? Like that takes relationship kind of out of it. And it's just being able to deliver the basics. So we were doing our pre-call, guys. I asked Priscilla, I was like, hey, has anyone ever approached you with how they use technology as a differentiator? And that was why I was asking that question, right? Because being able to deliver that great experience, but also backing it with technology is kind of the dream. And it sounds like you guys do that at Health Choice, but you guys are doing something very different. So I'm always curious.
No, absolutely.
And then finally, speaking of technology, you did mention this too in our pre-call. You mentioned automated onboarding and I started laughing and lighting up. What are you guys using? And it's like, is there something that you guys are doing for your internal paperwork to make that process less painful? By the way, I sell software that makes onboarding less painful, guys, just full transparency to staffing companies. But we also just did a report that said 35% of candidates feel like the onboarding process takes too long. Priscilla, what are you guys doing to improve that? I'm always curious, and you kind of hit the heartstrings.
So onboarding is certainly very important and creating that sustainable experience that we had talked about. So from an onboarding perspective, there's a lot of back-end work, and we actually have a committee of team members who are assigned to the onboarding process. So upon the person accepting a position till their first day, there's a series of different activities and communications that take place in the back end just to ensure that we're setting up that person for success. So we're diligently working with hiring managers, figuring out, we have an onboarding training checklist, and we identify what will help this person be successful within the first 30, 60, 90 days. What meetings do they need to attend as a learner? One of the things that have been very beneficial for us is we have what's called an HCN buddy. So we assign an advocate as someone who represents the culture of the organization, who has history with the organization. We align that person with the new hire so that they can take them under their wing and help them be successful in addition to the support that's around them. But it's really looking at different components within the onboarding process that can help that individual be ultimately successful. So some of the tools that we've looked at are capitalizing on sending paperwork electronically so that they don't have to go through. Before, we would have to meet and go through everything in person. Now we send all of the paperwork, all of the required documents before that person even starts. So when they first start, we have designated meetings that will, again, propel and provide information that will be valuable to that new hire. We ensure that they're meeting not only key stakeholders, going through walkthroughs so that they have a true understanding of that level of support, because we're not in person, but you still have a village of people around you who want to see you succeed. So we've just used our applicant tracking system, our HRIS system to leverage, some of those tools. We've gotten creative because unlike your organization, which I'll have to learn more about, we've created our own internal processes using, Microsoft products to be able to automate some of those initiatives.
What are you guys using for paperwork? Are you guys using DocuSign?
We do use DocuSign, and then it feeds through to our HRIS system.
That's good. I always appreciate an integration. I think that's what makes our tool so invaluable, is it integrates with the ATSs from the staffing industry to provide a lot of flexibility and just ease of use and efficiency, right? In that process of not having to download, copy, paste, upload, like all those steps take time, and then you have to make sure they're there. So we're at the half-hour mark. Usually like to start wrapping it up. So Priscilla, where are you going after you are no longer stuck at home, or where have you gone when we kind of got out of lockdown? I know we're supposed to be out of lockdown down here in Florida, but are we really free?
I know. I mean, I guess we're kind of sort of free, but I am just excited to travel. I I'm such a free spirit at heart, and I'm just itching to jump on planes and travel across the United States and around the world if possible. But that is really what I'm most excited about, is just traveling and just gaining new experiences with my family.
My wife is tired of seeing me because I usually would travel for 7 to 10 days a month, all of last year at least. And then she looked at me a month ago and was like, "You haven't left. You've been here." So I like to travel too, but a lot of it's for work. All right. Last and finally not least, how can people find you? And maybe what are you excited for, real quickly in the future of the IB podcast that you guys are going to do? I know you guys have multiple hosts now, right? Give us a quick, what you're excited about.
Sure, absolutely. So I am excited because as IB Podcast, we have an incredible group of hosts that are bringing in subject matter experts from all different industries and all different areas. So we have fantastic IT leaders, amazing leadership roles, now newly all the CHROs and heads of HR and talent acquisition that are coming through and are being featured on our episodes. So we're just excited to be able to keep touching all of our audience and being able to bring forth some of the topics that they've shared that they want to learn more about. And we have a lineup of wonderful speakers coming up, and some that we've recently interviewed, including the Chief Technology Officer at IBM, the CEO of Deloitte. So we're just excited to be able to bring great speakers to share good information.
You guys have interviewed some really awesome people. SVP of Steward Health, CTO at Microsoft, ex-CTO, Digital Empowerment Evangelist. I like that title, Jennifer Byrne. So check out the Ivy podcast. They're doing really exciting stuff. I'm probably most excited about travel. I really want to go whitewater rafting, so do something outside. Been stuck in my apartment in Miami and now Fort Lauderdale for too long. And you can find me on LinkedIn most of the time. I'm usually on there, pretty active. I sell to staffing people, and recruiters are typically online, LinkedIn. So just try and be where the fish are at this case, right? Not that people are my target audience. It's just robert.mann@ableteams.com. That's where you can find me. So did you give your email address, Priscilla?
My LinkedIn is Priscilla, Priscilla.Torres 20, and that's where you can find me. So I look forward to connecting with you all, and hopefully if there's anything I can do, I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time.
After this short break, stay tuned for our next segment of Ask Lauren.
CrimCheck protects staffing companies' employees, customers, assets, and brands by providing comprehensive, accurate, and compliant employment screening solutions. CrimCheck is accredited by the Professional Background Screening Association, an HRO Today Customer Satisfaction Award winner, an Inc. 5000 company, and minority-owned business as certified by the National Minority Supplier Development Council. CrimCheck's mobile-friendly solutions, award-winning service, and integrations with leading technology solution providers, including Able, will improve your team's efficiency, enhance your candidate experience, and accelerate your time to hire. For additional information, visit crimcheck.net/able.
What's up, Lauren? How you doing?
I'm super awesome. How are you?
I am doing well. We're recording this on 10/6, and we are loving technology this week. Lauren just dropped a really amazing video about our friends over at Great Recruiters. I have to go still watch it, by the way. I just read the context.
I think I was inspired by you, actually.
Oh, well, glad I can be inspiring. My aim is to add value, right? So there we go. All right, what do we got today?
Okay, so the question that I am getting continuously is, how do I know if I'm actually getting an ROI on my tech investment? Here's the big problem. That question is usually asked after they implement it and or buy it, when that's the opposite order. When you're looking at technology, you have to establish immediately what and how you're going to drive the desired behavior through metric-driven analytics. And so it's a little bit of the cart before the horse, yes, but what you need to be asking your potential tech stack vendor or your tech vendor is, what are the metrics that can demonstrate to me? And if you have a tech stack vendor that can't tell you what those are, that's also a red flag for the actual vendor. But you need to ask them, what are the best key metrics to ensure that I'm going to get ROI from this tool? And how am I going to measure every individual within my organization? If that vendor can't answer that question, you really need to scratch your head and go, am I making the right investment? One. But number two, if they're not able to answer that and or collaborate with you to refine them and establish them, then either you need to look at a different vendor or you need to understand you're going to do most of the work in trying to drive results through that technology. So you must have established metrics before you implement in order to ensure that you get a return on that investment. And unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of this that's backwards.
I think that makes sense from someone who sells software. You were making me like go back into my conversations when I'm demoing stuff and I'm like, okay, can I answer that question? And I could, but it's super enlightening. And I think that's something that even if you're a staffing leader or a recruiter listening to this, can you tell the metrics to your customer that you're selling to before you sell them? Hey, I'm going to do this, or this is what you can expect. And then if you are super jazzed about a software, I'm just recapping, Lauren, by the way. If you're super jazzed about a software and they can't tell you that, but you're still excited, then you need to set a proper expectation in your head that you are going to have to figure it all out. You can't be mad at the software when they're like, I don't know, because you signed with someone who said, I don't know in the sales process. It's just better expectations all around, right? Like that's a personal choice. Like you can't be mad at the vendor that says, I don't know how we're going to measure it, but if you'd like it, we'll work with you to figure it out. And then the first week when you can't figure out what the ROI is, you're mad at them, or at the end of the first month. I mean, you're allowed to be ridiculous because you're the customer, but it's ridiculous.
Exactly. And you know what? There are new technologies out there where I have been in my past life happy to walk through establishing those to help them and help me. And I was totally okay walking into it with my eyes open. It's just when we're not level setting expectations in the very beginning and then we're now desperate to get a return on the investment and we have nothing tangible, it becomes a real problem and creates friction between the relationship, partnership.
Yeah, expectations are everything to the relationship, right?
Absolutely.
Got to set them. Got to set your boundaries and your expectations.
It is like dating.
I love it. No, it is. Lauren, thank you so much. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you enjoyed the segment. Remember to send your questions to Lauren or myself. And if you're not following Lauren or myself on LinkedIn, you are missing out on all the gems that we drop. Thank you. Have a great day. Thanks, Lauren.
Hey, you do the same.